4, 3, 2, 1. Hey there, spiritual dope. Brandon Hanley here, on with my good friend Allan Dubon. Alan's had quite a bit of impact on the result. Actually, Allan, I reached out to you when I thought of spiritual dope. I was like, spiritual dope. And Allan and I had worked together on the prosperity practice when I did that. I was like, Allan, I want to do this thing. And you're like, well, are you sure you really want to do this thing? Or is that just another shiny object? I'm like, no, bro, I'm in. I'm all in. And Allan was part of giving me the green light. And I think what's really fun, Allan, is just earlier this week, I'd interviewed somebody else that has been a big part of helping to create the space that I'm in today, right? So I'm really glad that what I'm able to do is share some of the people that have helped me to get to where I am today with everybody else, right? Like, it's not like I did this by myself, right? And I think that's really important to know. Like, I didn't do this by myself. Like,
I love how this has worked out way better than prosperity practice.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so interesting. But before we get into all that, right? Before we get into any of that, actually, and this is about you. This is about you today. Let's give the audience a little bit of who is Allan Dubon? Let's get the background. Who are you? What are you doing here? What's up?
I would have answered this question differently about a year ago, considering, and I know we'll get into all that. So I won't deep dive into that yet. But really, what I've learned that I am is I'm a guide for people to change their lives for the better. And I tend to go down the business route for that. I came from immigrant parents, and, my dad took off when I was 9, and, poverty, you can call a lot of it a sob story kind of stuff, all the sad points that are there. And I just kind of use that to drive me to work harder and promise to never be back in that by my own choice, so, so I do like business consulting and connecting with amazing people like you, and just try to serve the world with my talents as best I can.
I love it, brother. And you really do. You do a great job of it, by connecting with others. I've never once seen you be like this overt markety guy. Maybe you were at one point. I don't know. I know I was for like a minute. I was like, hey, look at all my shit. I was like, hey, and here's 20 questions. Engage. And then fuck it. Anyways, I think that there's a place for that. Everybody has to learn in some way, but I appreciate what you do, how you go about it. And I think you're the genuine deal. So, that being said, what I like to start these off with is the idea that there is somebody out there who is listening in, and they're listening for, Source talks through you and I, right? So they're listening to what Source has to say to them through you today. What is that message?
Oh, that's big, man. For me, it's don't wait. Don't wait to do the things that you've been saying you're going to do. And it really comes from like this past year that I've gone through. March of last year, which we're in the end of January here, so just shy of a year, I found out I had leukemia. And man, you want to talk about a gut check, and I come from the world of medical lab science. I actually worked in the laboratory for the cancer hospital I went to a couple of years ago. So, just kind of knowing that, we all know we're going to die at some point, but we all kind of think it's further along, it's another time, and, unless you're sick, right? But if you're not sick, I was doing great. I was losing weight. I was getting healthy, working out every day. And all of a sudden, everything just changed and my world stopped. And so I realized I may not have the time that I thought I had to accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish. And so for me, it's don't wait. Get to it.
Yeah, I love that. I think another message that you are a big proponent of as well is stop playing small, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, let's talk a little bit about, again, the don't wait, right? What are some of the things that you felt like you were waiting on that you felt like you had time to accomplish? And then, like, um, going through the sickness, what were some of those, that got hammered home, right? You're like, oh shit, if I get, you may not have been this guy. You may have, dear God, if I get out of this, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I'm going to eat 2 peanut butter sandwiches, right? So, what were some of the promises, like, maybe you made to yourself while you laid there and going through this, and then, where do you see those going?
Yeah. Part of it was realizing a little bit more of what's important. So I'd gotten kind of caught up in my identity as a provider. And I think that happens to men a lot, at least from my experience. And so I was really pushing that provider thing. My wife she was very good at saying, hey, we need you. And I'd say, okay, well, let me calm down the business a little bit, rearrange some stuff at work, and, take me a couple weeks to wind that down to be able to give them more time. And sometimes that was the frustration, right? I'm doing this for you guys, for my wife and for my kids. And, I think sometimes when you come from poverty and you get a chance to not be there, you drive that part home, but you forget, I may still be here, but I can be an absentee dad, and I don't think I got that far, but I definitely could have fallen into that trap, So that's kind of one of the big things that came from that. And then, not waiting to travel and stuff. Like, my wife and I had talked about traveling for a long time, and it was, well, we'll do this, we'll do that, and now it's okay. As soon as things get a little bit right with my health a little bit, thank goodness I'm cancer free now. Now it's just getting more strength back in my body, and getting what I like to lovingly call my puppy shots. I got to get my vaccines because it wipes out your whole immune system. And so once I get vaccinated, a little bit of strength, and we kind of recover a little bit from the financial hit that comes with something like this, it's traveling, so that's going to be a big thing for us. And then I think the third biggest lesson was get out of debt. Like, we didn't have crazy amounts of debt, but I'll tell you what, when you're looking at it and you say, if I die, I wasn't afraid of death. I was afraid of leaving my family crippled with debt and other stuff that I took care of, and we could go through, as when things were normal. Now I'm very focused on, we're going to get out of debt so that if anything ever happens, we don't have to worry about that,
Yeah, that's powerful, right? It's powerful. I love the idea, right? You're always putting something off because of when we have enough or when it's the right time, right? And then there's also the idea of, just like you said, what else is important is, to have that family time, right? That's something that you can never get back.
Yeah.
Right. You can never get that back. And I know that I'm guilty of, kind of the same thing you're talking about. Sometimes it sways too far one way, right? The pendulum's always swinging, right? It's like,
Yep.
is there too much time with them? Is this forced time? And they can tell, like, you're just making time just to make time, right? They're like, no, just go away. We don't even want to hang out with you. Right. And then there's a time when, you're everybody's there and it's a good time, right? Like, I know that we spent last night watching Ant-Man, like, all together, just like impromptu, right?
Yeah.
And it was just great. Like, there was no force to it, and everybody's just kind of chilling. And I'm gonna remember just sitting there on the fucking couch watching Ant-Man, hanging out, right? Because that was great. Let's talk about, like, the spiritual side of it, right? Because I know that again, we were talking a little bit before here, and I love that you brought this up, like how you were forced to kind of determine whether or not like what you believe spiritually was showing up in your world outside, and it caused you to kind of take a deep look at that. And that's something I'm definitely curious about, especially going through what you went through, right? Having known you a little bit prior to and a little bit after, I'm definitely curious to see kind of what's changed for you in that aspect.
Yeah. It's one of those things that pretty much you get called on your bullshit, right? Like where is it BS and where is it real, and I think sometimes it becomes that trial of your faith, as far as you got to prove it, and it's never perfect, right? Just kind of like life, and you're never the perfect dad, you're never the perfect husband, but you can be a really damn good one.
Sure. Absolutely. Real quick though, do you have a faith background? Do you have a faith-based background?
Yeah. When I was born, we were Catholic, and I think that's a default setting on Latinos. No, but everybody we knew was Catholic, and all that kind of stuff. And then we moved to Utah, and we became LDS. We're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that's been my background. And it's been really interesting, because I don't fit necessarily that mold, as ultra conservative, ultra this, ultra that. But it's brought a lot of great value to me, and a lot of where my understanding comes from, and so when I was told what happened, hey, you've got your white blood cell count 68,000. Well, like I said, I'm a lab scientist who is trained in cancer stuff, in blood cancers. I told the doctor, I'm like, well, shit, that's cancer. I know. She goes, yep. She goes, I can't tell you because, you got to do all the confirmatory stuff. She goes, but you and I both know it's cancer. I was like, yep. Okay, cool. Here we go. And at first everything happens so fast, you don't have time to think. You're scared, but you don't quite know what you're scared of, because it's happening so fast. But once I got into the hospital and was sitting there, and you get alone time, even though my wife was there, she's in her head with her thoughts, I'm in my head with my thoughts. We'll hold hands and stuff, but sometimes it's like she wasn't there, for both ways, right? Like, to her, I wasn't there. And
yeah, man, look, I mean, you guys are just both like speculating on what the hell is what's the future hold, right? Because somebody says cancer and you're like, well, I don't know that I'm going to have all the time that I need to get everybody to where they got to get to and do all these things. How's, vice versa, right? Like, and you're like, how do I get through this, right? How do I get through this and stick with my family? I still never been to Brazil and I got to go, right? Right. Like, I never made Carnival. Shit. I always said I'd make Carnival. Right. And I never went. Like, I mean, Jesus, if you save me now.
And funny you say that, and I don't think it's bad if that's where you default to, like, hey, I'm going to promise to do this. We hear about stuff from religious folks, like religious leaders that have done that, and that's how they change their life. But I really didn't want to fall into that. I wanted to be as, I guess, real as I could about it. Definitely promised to be a little bit better, obviously, I think that's human default, but I didn't want to negotiate with God, because in my opinion, it's already kind of written out a little bit. I'm not a, no matter what I do, it's going to end up this way, but very much like, I think God knows, so I'm not going to win
right.
that.
I mean, there's the God's got a plan for everybody kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And so, just kind of going through that, and it was one of the biggest things to me was, I've always said that I wasn't afraid of death. Maybe the mechanism of death, I don't, fire, not so happy. Stuff like that.
Right. I mean, I think we all kind of want to go out in our sleep, right?
Yes.
Like,
Exactly.
could I'd like it to be sleep, painless. I mean, or whatever.
Sleep or a big truck, one or the other.
For sure.
But so that's kind of where I was like, okay, I'm here. I am a little nervous, but I had to think about it, right? And so it's like, well, I can't control that if I die. That's not up to me. We can do everything we can on this side, but at the end, it's not up to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be the adventure. And so if I die and what I believe is true, then there's happiness on the other side. And it's a little sad because I'm leaving my family, but I'll know that they'll join me later, you know?
Sure.
If it's not true and no, we don't exist after, then I don't know better. So that's fine too, you know?
Right.
So, you know, there was that element, and then, but mostly it was, you know, we talked a little bit about this before, was, is this a curse on me or is this a blessing on me? Is it all bad? Like, where's our attitude, you know? And I'll be honest, I went through a little bit of the why me, God. I'm a good person. I help people.
Sure.
You know, and then I started thinking, I'm like, well, Michelle's my wife. I was like, Michelle's mom died of colon cancer. And from everything I hear about her, she was an amazing person, better than me.
Right.
You know, so why would I be better than her in this negotiation if you don't die because you're good? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I've met other people that I know that are amazing people who crossed the line. You know, they went to the other side. And so,
sure,
you know, so there was that part. But I think what really pulled me out of this pity spiral, that I like to call it, is I went back to some of my core principles, and it was, what do you do when things suck? You do what you can, and then you serve others. And I learned that from my mom. We didn't have lots to eat, you know, growing up and stuff like that. We get some pantry help from churches or from the, you know, the state people that do that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I remember she got connected with a local grocery store, and they were just throwing out their bread that had like a day left or whatever, you know, day old or day left or something like that.
Sure.
And she went and talked to the baker and said, hey, why do you guys throw this out? And they're like, well, it's only got a day and we can't sell it, you know, and we got new stuff coming out. So long story short, she got that connected to where we would go up there. We didn't have a car, so we would take these little push cart things, walk up to the store about a mile away, and the baker would give us the day old stuff so that we could give it away.
Right.
Other folks who didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
Well, that turned out to be so good, and my mom connected with enough people that after a while, they were sending a small boxcar full of a bunch of groceries that they were just throwing out.
Yeah.
And they knew my mom wasn't going to go sell it, right? I think that was the big thing. And so we were helping people from all over the state, you know, within reason,
sure,
you know, driving distance and all that. But we didn't have sometimes stuff for ourselves to eat. And here we were helping other folks, you know, and I remember talking to my mom about it, and she says, you serve others. When things get bad, you serve others.
Yeah.
And she goes, when one of us eats, we all eat.
Yeah.
You know? And so I was like, okay. You know, and so when I got that pity when I was in the hospital, and I was in there during the big COVID part, right?
Yeah.
But my wife was able to be there right at first, so that made it easier. Scary, but easier. And then the second time I went in, they said nobody can be there with you. So now I'm truly alone with my thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's where it can get kind of...
Well, that's what, I mean, I remember, I think you reached out to me. I don't know. We reached out we chatted with each other a little bit while you were in there, right? And you're like, how can I help you? And I was just like,
yeah,
I just loved that was your attitude, right? Like, because there you were, there's really no answers for you, right? Yeah. You got no answers, and you're going out kicking, right? I don't even know about kicking, right? Like you didn't, I'm sure there must have been moments where, you know, you were just down, right? There's no, there's no way you kind of get through all that and you don't have a couple of those moments. But I love what you're saying there though, right? When you're down and out, you do what you can for yourself, that you know what you're in control of, and then, you know, try to serve others. That's a great way to be.
Yeah. And it's not easy, man. Like, and I don't say that like, oh, I'm awesome, because it wasn't easy, nothing like that. But sometimes I had to fake it and just try, you know? And so one of the things I was like, You know what? There's about 13 to 15 people that visit me every day, between the doctors and the CNAs and the cleaning folks and, everything that everybody that comes in. And they're not always the same. It's a learning institution, it's connected to the university and stuff. And so we get different kinds of folks coming in and then some of the same people. And I thought, let's learn their stories, because we get so caught up in, well, they're here to take care of me.
Right.
Well, yeah, but that's their job. Right. And they do it very amazingly, by the way. Shout out to Huntsman Cancer Institute, because their people are just miles above any. I've worked in healthcare my whole life, pretty much, and these guys are just miles above everybody else. But it's still their job.
Right.
They're worried about their college credits, their kids, their future, their everything, right?
For sure.
And so I started to talk to them about the stuff that I was good at, business and future planning and this and this, and really it helped me take my mind off of me.
Sure.
So it's kind of self-beneficial,
Right.
But we talked about their goals, and they'd come back and they didn't have tons of time, so it's a little 10 minutes thing, they're hooking me up or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, cool, well, how's your classes? Or there's a guy that was in a freaking concentration camp, or not concentration, when they're running away from like a
refugee.
Thank you, refugee.
Yeah.
See, there's my cancer fog that I talk about. I lose words sometimes. But yeah, so he was in a refugee camp for several years. Right. Came over to the States, started the process. He started school, and there were some other friends that came with him from that camp. And, life happened to him. He got married and some other stuff, and now he's not married. So it got a little rough, and he stopped his schooling, and he's like, maybe I'm too old, maybe I'm too this. I'm like, look, dude, let's get you back in school. Like, it's still your goal. So you had 4 years that didn't go the right way. Sure. You're still going to keep living, so those years are going to keep ticking. And so then he signed back up for school.
That's awesome.
And he came back and thanked me. And I just can't tell you how amazing that felt. That he was. I mean, I hate school, so I feel like I punished him. But you know what I'm saying, though? It's going to get his dreams and his career going, and he wants to go be a nurse practitioner eventually. And so, it gets him back on track to do that, and talking to others about their life and their hard stories. And, one of the nurses, I told her she needs to write a book because she's had some siblings die, and her mom's died, and I think her dad was still around, but it was kind of sketchy, how that went. Right. And so, but she was pushed through all of that. And statistically, she shouldn't be there, right? Statistically, she should be in the hood, just being poor and working a menial job. Right. And falling into the same traps that her parents were into, Right. But she broke through, and so just kind of things like that really opened my eyes to, hey, yeah, they're healthcare workers, but they're people first. Right.
Right. No, it's so easy. It's so easy to lose sight of that, right? It's so easy to lose. These people are here to save my ass, right? And you forget that they're, you can easily forget that they're people too, just like you're saying. But I'm gonna lean back in again one more time into kind of the serving people, right? To take it off of yourself, even if sometimes you have to fake it, right? I just had this conversation this past week. Like, even if you have to fake it a little bit, even if it's not even coming from the most genuine place, it's still a lot better than just about anything else you could be doing, right? Like, even if you're certain, like, and at some point, it becomes there's a tilting point, right? That, for like a while here, I mean, we talk about this from when I did Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, right? For a while there, it was like, I'm doing this for all the wrong reasons, but then at some point it's like, I'm like, that's just becomes who I am, and now I'm doing it for the right reasons. So it's just kind of like it's like a training mechanism, training tool, right? So that now when you go out there and you're like, I'm serving to serve, there's really not this like There's not an MO, right? There's not like something behind, there's
Yep.
not an agenda behind it, right? And when you start doing that, like you start feeling like, it sounds like you were feeling, right? Like you're connected. There's your mind is taken off of all of your woes when you're focused on helping somebody else.
I've always, well, not always. When I learned this principle, I created a little saying. It's, you become what you act. And so, and it's not a fake act. It's, if I want, I learned it first with weight loss stuff. If I keep eating like a 350-pound man, I'm going to stay at, that's where I was, right? So 350 was my number. And I'm like, if I want to weigh 180 or 200, I got to eat and move like a person who's 180 or 200. And I'm not there yet. So I have to act like that. And am I going to mess up? You betcha. I love ice cream. You can poison me with peanut butter and ice cream. Those are my two big things, right? But
That ice cream, is there poison in it? No.
but it's okay. I messed up today. I had a big bowl of ice cream or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, do guys that weigh 200 eat ice cream? Yeah. But they don't eat it every single day. And they don't, when they enjoy a big indulgent thing, they might go for a run or they walk longer or weight lift longer.
Right.
And so it started being that. It's what you act, you become. And so, that's kind of like what you're saying.
I'm buying 100%, man. I'm buying 100%. You know me. This is again, the exact process that I went through with fatherhood for the rest of us, and also just with anybody else out there that you're listening to, like anybody your mentorship through, even like through all the online videos, YouTube, and all the other stuff. Like you start taking that on. Everything that this goes back to those sayings, like are you Wayne Dyer fan? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got that story, like he asked you. So if I ask you, Alan, like when I squeeze an orange, what am I going to get out of it?
Oh, I don't know him that well. I just know.
Yeah. So it's like the answer is orange juice, right? But like,
oh, I thought he had something more special.
the deal is though, that's all you can get out of it, because that's all that can ever come out of it, right? It's just an orange juice. That's what's inside of it. So the other idea though is like whatever you keep putting inside of yourself, that's all that's going to be able to come out, right? So this content that you're trying, whoever it is that you're trying to become, whoever it is that you're acting as if, it's not even acting as if, you're like, this is who I am now. That's all that can come out, right? And you act as if you consume all that and you put all that in you, and that's eventually, quite literally, all that can come out. It's uncanny, right? And I think that it takes a little bit of time, but once you make that decision and start to step into it, like you're that 180-pound man that you're talking about, right?
Yeah. In high school, I had a teacher tell me, because I was going through some pity cycle stuff. My dad's gone. We don't have a lot of money, and like stacking up all the stuff that is against me.
Arguing for your limitations.
Yeah. And he told me, you choose to be happy. And my young brain, I didn't say this to him out of respect, but inside I'm like, F you, dude. You got a perfect family. You got perfect life, a beautiful wife. You guys make money. He was a teacher, so I thought they made money. Boy, was I wrong. But so in my head, his life was perfect.
Sure.
Well, he had a kid that was going through some stuff, and it just wasn't perfect like I thought it was. And he's not making the kind of money he should, because he's a freaking teacher, and so it all kind of clicked several years later, but for some reason I always remembered him saying that. And so I was still in that bad cycle, and I said, okay, I'm going to choose to be happy.
Right.
So I literally woke up and said, I'm going to be happy. And I felt like such a liar, which I wasn't happy, but I kept saying that. And every morning I kept saying it. And all of a sudden I just started being more positive.
Sure.
My circumstances didn't change. I was still a poor kid, and all the other crap that I talked about, but I chose to be happy. And so I think that was the beginning foundation of this stuff that I've learned and magnified through my cancer experience, you know?
Which you talked about being called on your BS, right? Like on what you believe. What were some of the things you felt like you were called on in your spirituality, and like, what kind of maybe got strengthened, and how are you applying that today?
Part of it was talking to God, right? And so to me, I don't think you have to necessarily get on your knees and, dear Heavenly Father kind of thing. Like, I do that, but I also think that you can talk way more often. Like, there's times when you go talk to your parent that it's a little more formal. And then there's other times where, like, hey, Mom, what do you think about this? And you just throw it out there and let her ruminate on that a while, and she gets back to you, so it's a little bit more of that, right? Like, and so I did that more. And then it's like, why did I ever let that go? And not that it was gone completely, but I wasn't doing it as much. And it's like, I got an open channel. I like what you say, God, source, universe. Like, I love that, because you can label whatever you want. And
look, man, it's whatever clears that channel for you, right? Like,
yeah.
if you've got to tune into Fox to get your information, you got to tune into Fox, right? Like, I mean, I don't care how what channel you call it, right? But it's the one. It's a filtration system, right? Your mind is a filtration system, right? And like, for a lot of other people, like, the word God it's a bad fucking filter, right?
Yeah.
So if I call it universe, I'm totally, oh, universe. Well, that's different, right? Like, let me tune into that. Fabulous, right? So there's like this open lane of something that's never been filtered, right? So that way they're just like it's just a brilliant conduit. So that's why that's my reasoning and logic. I'm getting closer to being able to use God myself, like, just being comfortable with it, because it's not something I was ever comfortable with.
Yeah.
But I'd like to hear. So tell me more about, like, what are some of the conversations you have, right? And what's some of the feedback?
It was a lot of, am I fulfilling my purpose? Am I being good enough to people? Am I loving my wife enough? Like, I'm thinking here, my time, my ticket might get stamped here in a second, and I got to get on that train to the other side, and so did I do enough to show my wife I loved her, I cared about her? Was I a good enough man to her? All of these things. And same thing with my children. Did I teach them enough lessons that they're going to be okay? Like if I go out, yeah, they're going to suffer some, and they're going to be sad, and they're going to, but did I give them enough tools to work through their life, to learn things, to be good to other folks, and to become good members of society, and be able to take care of their families? Did I do enough of that? Did I serve my fellow man enough? Or was it all lip service so I could put it on Instagram,
Why you calling me out, bro?
There's a lot of that kind of stuff. And
so I mean, what was some of the responses that you felt like you got?
I felt that I was told that I had done well with what I knew,
mm-hmm.
and that I was going to be given a chance to be even better.
So you had a sense of hope,
in
that message, response message, right?
There were scary times where I'm like, I think I'm hoping. I think I'm telling myself this.
I got the wrong line.
Yeah, that was me saying it to me, like, oh, you're not going to die, because
I mean, that's a great question, though, right? How do you differentiate from, this is I'm sure it's a slippery slope, but, like, how do you differentiate the response that you get from yourself versus the one you get from God?
To me, it was, or at least what I felt, right? What
the feeling?
Yeah, it was a feeling that I didn't feel like I was doing it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, being told that I was going to live through this sometimes felt scarier than hey, you're checking out in 2 months.
Well, yeah, because you got a lot of bills you're racking up, and there's still shit you're gonna have to show up for. Like you're like, well, listen, if I just finish up this pudding, and roll out, like I'm cool with that because
Yeah,
there must have been some of that thought too, right? Like be like, holy shit, like when I come out of this, like, I might even be destitute. I'm going to be worse off. Like, the struggles are going to be real, right? Like, what's the quality of life going to be if I do get to live through this?
Yep. Yeah. Those are all real. That's the not pretty part of it, right? Not that there's really
I don't think there's any pretty part of it, right? Yeah.
But you know what I mean, though. Like there's stuff where you're like, yes, I got to ring the bell, because that's kind of a big thing in cancer stuff is when you're told that you're. Sorry, my door system calls me when somebody rings it. But
that's why they call it a ring.
It's one of those things. It's like, okay, yeah, I get to ring the bell and I get to say I'm cancer free, or I finished my transplant, or but what does that mean? Like, right. I walked out of there looking like a freaking cancer patient.
You did. You looked.
I'm a brown guy, and I was pretty white.
You were pretty pale.
And I'd lost like 100 pounds, and
nobody wants to do it that way.
Yeah, I couldn't pick up 50 pounds, and
wow.
This is from a guy who could pick up 300 pounds with relative ease. It was heavy, but I could do it. And now I can't even pick up 50 pounds. It was, hey babe, can you open my
Well, and that must have felt like, especially coming from, Western society, being a male, needing to be kind of the strong guy and facing your mortality, and then also facing like, all these things that you couldn't do and needing help, especially when you've labeled yourself and identified as the provider.
Yeah. Well, and also the protector, right? I saw some stuff growing up against women and that I don't stand for. Like, I can't tolerate that. And now being in a position that if somebody came up and slapped my wife or my kids or something, I got to sit there, like I still go fight them, but they kick my ass, but
stand still, I'm coming for you.
But it's that thing, like I could not protect my family, and that both financially and physically, right? So that messed with my head a lot.
Well, that's the whole, like, I hate to, again, I'm not a Jesus dude. I'm not a big on the Bible, but like kind of the meek shall inherit the earth, or like kind of going through that and feeling, and I'm not even saying like, you're inheriting the earth, but like you're going through this process of just being completely and totally, you've got to surrender, right? To everything. Yeah, so, tell me a little bit about, applying that to your situation, because surrender is big one for sure.
My wife and I discussed this. We didn't use that word. I wish I would have had it. And I'm going to talk to her tonight when she gets home from work, But, she's like, how can you be so calm about this? Because she'd have moments where she tried to be so strong, like too strong. And then it would break. And so she'd cry. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you're the one going through this. I'm like, no. We are going through this.
Right.
And so one of the things that I told her is I said I had to give up, not give up on fighting, give up on controlling any of this. We are not in control. And I said, we talk about believing in God and that He's in control. I said, we're still human. We still want to be in control. And we think that we're in control of stuff. We're not at all.
Right. We're going through this huge rock flying through the sky and all these other things. And we're like, I got this. And right. Nowhere near it. Tell me some more.
Yeah. So like, one of the biggest things was they had to stick this needle in my back all the way into my spinal cord, pull out cerebral spinal fluid.
Awesome.
And then put in methotrexate chemo and another kind. I don't remember what the other kind was called.
That's good for the bone, for have to go through it.
To make sure that if anything went past the brain barrier, then they killed that too, right? Because that's where my kind of leukemia likes to hide there. And so they check it, do a count, and then put that stuff back in. Tell you what, and they numb the spot where they put it in. That's it. You don't get anything else. So you are wide awake and fully lucid, and it was stuff like that. And, they punctured into my lung to get a biopsy when I got pneumonia. And, once again, they just numb the spot. And the rest of you is very much awake, And so these things are pretty scary because of the level of pain that's there. They can numb it up, but there's still pain.
Yeah.
And then the lack of control, right?
Yeah. On your side, right? Like you got no control over that.
Yeah, I can control my breathing and not flinching.
Yeah.
And so that's all I focus on. I'm like, if I flinch, they could hit a nerve, they could collapse my lung. I know. Real comfortable stuff, right? You didn't know you'd get an anatomy lesson here today.
No, sir. No, thank you.
But I controlled my breathing.
Right.
I controlled what I could, right? So this is kind of coming back to that pity party stuff. I control what I can, and then I serve others. So I'm like, okay, how the hell do you serve others when they're stabbing something in your back?
Yeah.
Those came through the back, one up top for the lungs and one, and multiple times. It wasn't just a one-time thing,
Yeah.
So we talked about stuff. I used to sell real estate, so we talked about real estate. And the guy was buying a house, and somebody, ask your mortgage lender this and do that, and don't buy this. And he's like, dude, how are you like so focused on? I'm like, because if I focus on what you're doing, I'm going to freak out.
Right. No, that's true, right?
So that one was totally self-serving.
Right. But again, like, you're doing it to, you're doing it in a way is like, how can I still help this person along? And when you're doing that, again, like it's almost like a burden's lifted off you. And it's really also a lot in how we start the podcast off, right? Like there's something that if you open yourself up to it, right? You're like, if you're asking the question is, how can I serve this person? What can I do to serve this person? Source will provide you with something, right? And while you're filled with doing that thing, you're essentially being filled with source, right? Like so there's this kind of life-giving thing flowing through you so that you can provide to this other person, and it takes away your pain, man.
Yeah, it's how I surrendered.
Yeah.
Like going back to the original thought of this.
Yeah.
It's how I surrendered. It was forced on me.
Yeah.
I could always decline. They always tell you don't have to do any of this. We can just give you stuff to keep you comfortable. I'm like, no, I got to live. I have to do this.
Right.
I got kids I got to fight for. My wife I got to fight for. Right. And so I was like, if you guys think I got a shot, I'm fighting. We're doing this.
Yeah.
But they always tell you, hey, you got a choice. You don't have to do this.
Right.
Well, my surrender was, I can pray all day, but if I just pray and don't take the action, back to the Bible, faith without works is dead, right?
Right.
So God is powerful, but he's given us science. He's given us all of these tools that aren't perfect yet.
Right.
But they're the best things that we have.
But
right? We can eat healthy.
For our level of understanding, right? Yeah.
We can eat healthy. We can do good, but the blueberry is not going to take away the cancer,
Not enough antioxidants.
but I can eat the good stuff to help feed my body so that it can tolerate what's going to happen to it a lot better, right?
Right.
And I think that's kind of the approach I took was faith, body nutrition, which I'm still not perfect at, and science, right? Let them do what they're going to do. I can control what goes in my mouth, and sometimes I don't choose well because of ice cream.
Moose tracks. So when, let's just talk a little bit about how like maybe has this changed, kind of you're going through the cancer, reconnecting, having these conversations with God. How do you feel like that's helping you move forward for a more fulfilling life right now?
It really woke me up, like what I said at the beginning. You don't have time. You just don't.
Yeah.
So it's a little more urgency, not in a fear like, oh crap, I'm going to die, but in a, dude, I got to get my butt moving. I can't half-ass it,
Sure.
And that the world is good. We've seen a lot of craziness, no matter what, here in the States, no matter what political side you're on, there's craziness on both sides.
Sure.
And it, manifests in different ways. And so there's a lot of that. and the news media wants to just sell us scary stuff, tornadoes, politics, and everything else in between. But I got a chance. This is where the blessings come in. I got a chance to not have to focus on that. I didn't have the energy to focus on that crap.
Oh yeah, wow, that's crazy.
So I didn't have to, right?
Right.
And I got to see what beautiful people there are in the world. I got to see people, my wife's cousin did a little GoFundMe for us, One of the people that donated reminded me of that story of the widow's mite. The rich guys were tithing everything and just throwing buckets of money in, and she threw in essentially a quarter, or whatever,
right?
And because that's all she had. Well, there was a lady who, she's like on her third round of cancer. Her husband and her son have died of cancer.
Wow.
And like all of this crap, and she gave $20. And she was amongst the smallest donations monetarily. But I'll tell you what, to me, she stood out the most.
Right.
Because here she is. I'm really starting to understand at that point. I haven't even seen the biggest bills, but I'm starting to see them, and I'm like, holy poop, like, how are we going to do this?
Right.
And here she has lost the stuff that's most important in her life, her family.
Yeah.
She's fighting alone, and she's willing to give me $20 in my fight.
Right.
And she doesn't really know me. She knows my sister-in-law, and so it was stuff like that. People, how can we help you? How can we do this? Our next door neighbors, when I had to get in my very first time being admitted, they called us, and they said, you need to be here within an hour. Well, I live 45 minutes away from the hospital, and they're like, be here within an hour or you lose your room. Oh, crap. And they're like, and your kind of cancer needs immediate attention. Oh crap. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
So we go to the neighbors. Essentially, my wife pretty much tells them, here, take my kids. We're going to the hospital. They didn't know I had cancer because we hadn't told anybody yet. We didn't want to stir the pot yet until we knew what we were fighting.
Right.
Well, all of a sudden, it was real and right now.
Right.
She's crying and she's telling them, and we don't know when we're going to be back. And she goes, her and her husband were like, go, just go. Don't worry about it. We can bring you clothes. We can go buy you underwear. We'll bring you stuff. Just go.
Right.
Don't miss your spot. And so we grabbed a couple things, and I was there for 2 weeks. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I think, I'll be honest, I don't really remember if my wife went home. She might have after a few days to get some clothes, in and out, and then back. So my kids were with the neighbors, then with my wife's brother and his wife, for a little bit and stuff like that. And so it was just people who stepped in,
right,
who have busy lives. They're doing their stuff,
right. And
all of a sudden our emergency, and they're stepping in, and just lots of acts of kindness. When talking about Instagram, posting stuff on Instagram, somebody gave us what I think is called a heart attack, I've learned. And so they come in and just put a bunch of hearts on your door and like little nice messages, we love you. And,
oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Well, I told you I got a ring, right? My ring wasn't working. So I have no idea who it was.
Right.
And so they came in, did a heart attack. And then all of a sudden we get this big knock, and it's like 8 or 9 o'clock. I don't remember. So we're like, who the heck, Right. So we go downstairs and just see this beautiful message.
That's great.
It's cheap construction paper and markers. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be money.
It does. Yeah, it doesn't have to take a whole lot to just do some acts of kindness or make somebody's day. Right. You and again, I'm gonna go back to how you feel while you're doing it. Right. Is kind of the key. Right. You're gonna feel good. Like you feel good. The recipient feels good. You're not in control of how the recipient's gonna receive that, but as long as you are in the spirit of giving to give, and you're not in the spirit of giving to receive a reaction.
Yes.
Right. Because that's a big thing too. Right. So, and I think that's kind of what you're illustrating here is right. Giving without like kind of this expectation, giving, so that, you can be of service to others. And, kind of, I think the other part was like, you asked if in your conversation with God is like, am I fulfilling my purpose? I think that'd be a word. What was the answer to that one? What did you feel on that?
I felt that I had done well, but not good enough. And that hurt a little. It wasn't a reprimand, but it was you can do better. And really it's about being more purposeful, not just, oh, we got an extra $300 around Christmas time. Let's see who we can get some gifts for, which is great. And that's a good thing. But now, somebody took care of our Christmas for us, and a couple families, and they organized and all this kind of stuff. And my kids now are like, Dad, can we do that for somebody next year once you got your job again? Because I'm not working and stuff, right?
That is awesome. Well, I mean, you still got your consultant services, and you're still able to do that, right? So, I mean, and I know that you've had some tremendous success there in the past. I know that you've helped me, put business stuff together. You've helped me put my websites together. So I know that that's stuff that you're still capable of doing.
Yeah, and it's just, I'm just getting to the point where I can consider that,
right?
Because energy wise,
are you still pretty depleted?
Yeah, so it's the commitment, right? Like,
yeah.
Could I build a website? Yeah, but can I commit to
a timeline and stuff like that?
Yeah. It's stuff like that, and it's kind of teaching me that patience and that what'd you call it? Surrendering. Thank you.
Yeah.
Again, that doesn't sound right. The surrender.
Ice cream.
It's okay. I'm learning patience. That's what I'm being taught right now.
Yeah.
And I hate it. But I get the value of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's the whole idea of like, you don't have to slow down, but calm down, right? Like take it at a slow, not slow, but a deliberate, purposeful, intentional pace, right? Not frantic, as if there weren't enough for everybody, because there is, right? And not, I love your experience is also too the idea of providence, right? Like, you've been the provider, but people will provide for you, right? Yeah. And it's not that it's something that you're not looking for a charity, but it's something that will happen naturally if you kind of allow for it, right? Again, the providence, surrendering to the universe, to God, whatever, just being like, hey, I'm doing what I can, right? And so, what is it? So what does it feel like then? I guess if you're not fulfilling, what do you feel like you could be doing more? Do you feel like you need to be playing bigger? What's that look like for you?
Excuse me, a little bit of both, right? I had exceeded. I like to look. I'm a data nerd, so statistically, people who had my upbringing don't reach where I've reached.
Sure.
But to me, that's not good enough. And it's not to aggrandize myself. It's so I can serve others. Mm-hmm. And so it's that tool of, or not the tool, it's getting the tool, which is money and connections and stuff like that, so that I can then teach others how to grow out of their situation, wherever that might be.
Right.
Right. And so playing bigger to that with urgency, but not frantic, like you said. Calm down.
Right.
But that's my calling.
Right.
It's been made very crystal clear to me. And taking care of people in that sense, and then planning and purposefully doing things. Like, hey, once I get my job back, or I can do my business or whatever, however that looks.
Right.
We're going to create an account where we're going to start actually putting money away every check, every sale, every whatever, so that it's not, oh, we happen to have an extra $200. Let's get a couple Nerf guns and dolls for these folks. It's
right.
Hey, we can really plan this out,
right,
and serve 1, 2, 5, 10 families, whatever it is,
right,
but make it purposeful versus, oh, we're going to be good people and help, but it's because we happen to have $300 extra.
For sure. No, I get it.
Yeah,
no, that makes sense, man. I love it though, man. So I've loved your journey. I've loved, I don't love that you had cancer, but I do love that, I love the way that you went through it, and how you kept your shit together for the
Thank
most part, how you faced it, with this attitude of service. And I'm just super glad that we had the opportunity to connect and that you made it through, man. You've been a big part like I told you everybody at the beginning, big part of Spiritual Dope, big part of my own journey. And, I'm not a data analytics guy. So, my forecast though was like, more Alan. Right. My forecast is more Alan in the life. And, so if, if you were coming out of it and you had more energy right now, who would be like somebody who's your ideal client?
Somebody who's got an idea of where they want to be, and a purpose. And it doesn't mean you have to know exactly what the business is or anything like that. You can, or grow the business or whatever, but really it's about purpose. And the purpose to me needs to be more than just, I got to make money. It's got to be, what am I going to do once I make money in my life? And how am I going to serve others? Because that's what drives me. It's that money's a tool. That spans the gamut of, hey, they're only making 50,000 a year, or maybe they're making 5 million a year. It spans all of that, because it's hey, it's more of a purpose driven than I want to make this much per sale.
No, I love that. Right. When you inject purpose into kind of everything that you do, you really, you accelerate it. Right. So what you're offering to do then is to help people kind of get clarity and accelerate their purpose and vision, so that they can have a more fulfilling life. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Awesome, brother. Hey, thank you so much. Like I said, I know you're still kind of coming out of it, but I appreciate you jumping on and sharing a bit of your story, sharing your conversations with God, even though you're not, what's that guy's name, Neil Donald Walsh or whatever. So Alan Dubon's take on conversations with God today, fighting cancer, and getting, I mean, it's just a second shot, right?
Yeah.
I love that for you, man. So thanks again. Where can I send people to check out more Alan?
I'm pretty much Allan Dubon everywhere. AlanDubon.com, on Instagram, Facebook, at Allan Dubon, even Clubhouse. So
awesome. All right, but thanks for being on today.
Thanks, guys.